Thank you ever so much, Brian. Appreciate the welcome and really pleased to be here with everyone. As Brian said, I lead the AI applications and blockchain business. And there we're really focused on how we enable our clients to automate mission critical workflows, leveraging both AI and blockchain to transform how they do work. And when you really think of how people do work and the actual business processes that are being executed, we live in an exciting time where blockchain is powering so many core processes that are taking place and being transformed in the enterprise. Consider, if you will, and I'm just going to try and get my chart changed again. 1 second there. Yes, thank you. Consider, if you will, what's just happened with New York State and the Excelsior project and what we've been doing, leveraging blockchain to essentially provide a digital health pass to successfully track and allow people to demonstrate whether they've been vaccinated or not. Think about what's going on in Norway. We have a customer we work with there called Quare. I needed to get the pronunciation right. Working with a business partner called ITEA, where we've been focusing on how we leverage blockchain technologies to support the tracking, tracing, and provenance of Norwegian salmon, and indeed broader seafood, because in that context, it's extremely critical to their business processes that the provenance be proven and the value be maintained. Or consider what's going on at Home Depot, where leveraging blockchain technologies, there's a core focus on invoice reconciliation. And when you think about that process of invoice reconciliation, which you may be forgiven for thinking is like, that's got to be maybe one of the least interesting things anybody does. But think about it. This is about bringing people together, agreeing on what needs to be paid and received. And it can always be a very contentious process. By leveraging key technologies like blockchain and really helping to automate, streamline, and smooth those interactions, you don't only drive business benefits, but quite frankly, improve the relationship with key suppliers. We're also seeing advances in the world of intellectual property. IPW is working leveraging blockchain technologies to fundamentally tokenize patents and make it easier for customers to begin to manage their patent portfolio, trading and managing accordingly as they progress with their business interests. Each of these examples, to my mind, speak to this very notion of addressing core business processes. And what I'm really fixated on and what I'm looking forward to is essentially the scaling and adoption of blockchain technology within the enterprise, supporting key business processes, transforming them and the way in which people work. And that can only be achieved if we have a vibrant and active Hyperledger community. Like today, I'm really excited to make a couple of announcements. First and foremost, we will be introducing, available in 3Q this year before the end of September, support for Hyperledger Fabric deployments. This means that customers looking to go live with enterprise projects based upon Hyperledger Fabric will be able to get a simple support offering from IBM to support their commercial deployment. This will be in the context of certified images running on Red Hat OpenShift, and we'll make it available through our Red Hat marketplace. But fundamentally, this just says you can now go forward into production feeling extremely secure and supported around your open source based project deployment. We're also announcing the contribution of key code contributions. And in particular, I want to focus in on the Fabric Operations Console. In our, what you'd call it, commercial IBM blockchain platform, we built a management console to make it very easy to essentially create and instantiate and manage instances of a blockchain, link nodes together, all that good fun stuff. We are taking that entire capability, which has been proven in production over the last couple of years, and contributing that into Hyperledger Labs. This should fundamentally make it easier for everyone to be able to manage and deploy blockchains based upon Hyperledger Fabric. And so that ensures that we are enabling this notion of what I've called scale and adoption in the enterprise as we all fixate on getting people to do real work. We're also contributing some of the work that has been going on around Fabric tokens, the tokenizations we've been doing with some of the centralized banks in Europe, contributing that to continue to help drive that conversation forward. And I'm particularly interested in the work we can do around interoperability. We've made some contributions under Project Weaver, and in talking with others of you active in the community, looking at how we work together between Weaver and Cactus to ensure that we have a strong interoperability story. Because the more we drive this out into the enterprise, we need to be able to ensure that blockchains can effectively communicate with others, right? Permission blockchains can link with others. And we're seeing this even in work that we're doing today around food supply in our food trust offering as people create micro networks that need to be linked with other networks, for want of a better word to describe it. And so this very notion of contributing code, driving vibrant activity, and ensuring that we are providing as an option a safe pair of hands to support deployment is essential to our ethos of how we move forward in supporting the community. So I'm hopeful and expectant that you all will get involved and jump in and start to progress this forward, because that's the only way in which we're going to actually make a real impact in business. I am very fond of saying, and I say this all the time, that technology is but a means to an end. And I say this as a deep technologist who has spent his entire career in and around software. That end is about driving value. It's about transforming what people get to do every single day. And to achieve that end, it's important that we all come together as a vibrant community with an eye towards use cases that are driving our innovation by deploying against real work. Real work, real business processes being automated, as I've already said, is to my mind, the true arbiter of the value that we bring as technologists to the enterprise. Transforming those processes speaks to everything that we get done. With that in mind, when you think about that very notion of how we can collaborate, I like to think about it as a multi-stack diagram that you can come in at any level that makes sense to you, be you a developer, an ISV, a business partner, whatever it might be, a global systems integrator, various levels in which we can come together to play. Obviously, a lot of what we do is based upon Red Hat OpenShift and by extension, Red Hat Linux, right? We've been very focused on that. That in its own right is an open source based foundation. Built on top of that, Fabric. Just recently, what we can do around Fabric, how we can bring in innovation projects via the Hyperledger Labs and continue to evolve that level. We, within IBM, are then doing work on critical use cases that we want to spend our time on. I am particularly active in the realm of supply chain in my business, where we've been really focused most recently on the problems around food traceability. These translate very well into other what I would call responsible sourcing endeavors, whether you think about it around minerals, right? So think about mining, or you think about it around things like spare parts and their provenance. There's a lot that's going on as we think about core commodities that move within a supply chain and being able to effectively track them, trace them, and prove their provenance. That's also building forward into a lot of conversations we're having around sustainability. Think about e-waste disposal as an example, or think about being able to effectively track carbon footprints and emission impact of elements as they move through the supply chain. So lots of exciting work going on in there. And once again, welcome engagement as we look at how we advance this particular domain. Credentials are critical, right? We've been doing work around the vaccination passports. I know many others are doing the same. That represents a key area of focus. I think we will see a lot more beginning to evolve there. I'm particularly intrigued by things around learning and employment records. And when you think about this, you're really talking about how people are able to truly substantiate and prove their qualifications and make it very easy for employers to know what they are getting. Now, anything around credentials has to be appropriately, I would call it, encapsulated in key discussions around privacy, opt-in, opt-out policies, and those remain central and core. But you can also see how fixating on these kind of problem sets allows us to really streamline activities as people need to engage in, showing their credentials, as we've seen in just the experiments, I would say, prototypes being done in New York State around vaccines. And of course, a lot of work going on digital assets, which we can all play in. A lot going on in financial, and indeed, I would put IP here. So there are various use cases, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I like to think about engaging and partnering in the context of use cases, because that really allows us all to fixate on the end goal that we are looking to drive. Last but by no means the least, there's always the opportunity to build services around all this kind of work and support customers in their deployments and operations. So I think it's extremely critical as we think about this and as we lay out this stack will guide our engagement as IBM over the coming months and years as we continue to look at how we, first of all, drive innovation and vibrancy into the underlying Fabric community and Hyperledger community as a whole, because there are also key innovations to be done there. Build on that to address targeted use cases that we think are critical and encourage interoperability, participation, and engagement there in the context of serving our customers. And ensure, to bring this back to what I started with, ensure that we are therefore successfully enabling our customers to automate mission-critical workflows, leveraging AI and blockchain to transform how they do work. That digital transformation of how they do work, that enabling of new business processes or more efficient business processes is key and central to my mind to the end goal that guides all that we do. And I really just look forward to your ongoing engagement and partnership in this regards as we take this forward. So let me fundamentally end here with a little call to action. We will be having a webinar on June 30th to kind of dive deeper into some of these key code contributions and provide more information around our key support offering. And so we obviously welcome and invite you to join us there. But really, at the end of the day, this for me is all about engagement. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with you further as we go on this journey together to fundamentally enterprise in every which way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem. If you hang out for just a bit, it was really great to hear about these announcements. We've seen so much come in from IBM into Hyperledger Labs recently. This doesn't fit the narrative we hear out there in the press. That enterprise blockchain is a contradiction in terms or is dead or anything like that. I mean, the pundits love to get kind of clickbait around that kind of stuff. This is a very different story. It sounds like things have grown quite a bit at IBM in terms of the business around this and the commitment. So just any other final thoughts on kind of how important this is to you all and to the growth of the ecosystem?
Yeah, look, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think when you think about pundits and clickbait, they tend to fixate on technology. I tend to fixate on its application. When you think about what's going on in IBM, and really when you think about what I've tried to emphasize here, this is all about use cases. Fancy technology that is not being used is just fancy technology sat on a shelf. And I think it's a disservice to the innovation, the contribution, the participation in the community that's taking place here in Hyperledger to fixate simply on the element itself without thinking about how is it being used, and most importantly, how does that usage drive innovation and evolution, right? That to me is what is key and central. I see the same conversation taking place in AI. I'll give you a quick example of something to think about. We all talk about machine learning models. Nobody talks about what does it take to maintain and operate machine learning models in an enterprise context. When you've deployed that model, now you want to extend its features. You need to version that model. You need to correct that model. You've got software running in production. How are you updating that model? These are the things that we need to be thinking about and working on, not just, oh, how much cleverer is the next model, right? And this is what drives my passion. This is what I think drives our passion when I think about blockchain. I get fired up when I think about using it. And it is a key technology for enabling these use cases. When you speak to customers, as I said, I spend a lot of my personal time in supply chain. When you look at the problems they need to solve around commodities, when you hear about the challenges in food safety recall, I have had more conversations on leafy greens and yellow peppers than you might actually think can should be occurring. I didn't even know all the stuff I now know about leafy greens. When you engage in those conversations and fundamentally recognize the problem set and realize that we can leverage blockchain to enable and address, you cannot but understand that the state of the union, as it were, is good. So yes, I am excited. Yes, I look forward to our further engagement and hopefully doing something like this again in person as things begin to open up and making a fundamental impact on how we engage and live as businesses leveraging these technologies.
Thank you. Well, there's a ton of questions that came in during your talk. I'm not going to ask them all. There was one that came in about the Fabric operations console. This is a big contribution. This is the key part, one of the key parts of IBM blockchain platform that now you're releasing as open source. And I think it speaks directly to that. Many of these questions you've asked about, how do we make this manageable? How do we make it make sense to enterprises? And so really wanted to thank you for that. In fact, there's a panel coming up in an hour with a deeper dive into the different contributions that IBM has made into labs to talk more about this and others with some heavy hitters on that panel. So I'll save some time, refer to that. Thank you again so much, Kareem, and looking forward to continued collaboration between IBM and the community.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.